So once you hit Essential Sounds here, this little panel shows up over here. And then if I get my zoom out of the way, you can either do editing of your sound, which gives you some really good filters and effects you can put on some of your sounds, or you can go over to Browse. See this little tab right there? And then you go under Adobe Stock, and here's a whole bunch of stuff that's showing up based on just things you might want to do. And most of them are free, but you can pick a mood, you can pick a type of music. Here's some different kinds of effects you can put on it. Ooh, that's cool. I didn't even know it had that. Change the beats per minute, which is changing the beats per minute is if you're going to make loop-based music, like, you know, you got like that. Well, you can speed it up so it's like, it won't change the pitch usually if you do it right. So you can either pick how many beats per minute, or you can pick duration and download a bunch of little sound beats, and you can make your own music. It's pretty cool. So it has no vocals. It's a lot of different things you could choose here. So that's kind of neat. I haven't used that very often. Most of the sounds I use, I just record, or I just get them as sound effects somewhere else. Like from YouTube, they have a lot of cool sound effects you can download on YouTube. So this does have some good sound effects on it, I believe. Let me type in gunshot. I'm going to click it, save to local folder, add to project. Let me just add it to my project here. So it brought it in, Adobe Stock. I don't know if it's going to try to charge me money later. It says this export contains low quality, unlicensed audio previews. To license it, you have to download it and go into the little shopping cart that's over here. That's a little tricky. They should probably tell you that ahead of time. Personally, I just go onto YouTube. I go into my little channel, but you can find pretty darn good music in there that's really good quality. I've been doing that for a lot of my movies lately because it's free, you know. It's under Window Essential Sound. See mine? Under Edit, you guys see my desktop, right, where it says dialogue, music, sound effects, and ambience. Basically what you do is you say, okay, this is my voiceover, and then you click on dialogue, and then it has some nice things you could do in here. If you don't want to call it dialogue and you found out that it's actually music and you got it wrong, you can change the type here. You can save and download a preset if you have certain kinds of effects that you really like. Loudness, you can match it to other clips that are in there. If you have like a noise or a rumble from wind, you can turn it down a little bit if you were outside shooting. This hum is for 60 megahertz. Buzz is usually the most common. Buzz, what that is you plug in your microphone and the cord is too close to electric cords in your house. It'll make a sound like, that's called the 60 megahertz buzz. So if you have any kind of humming or buzzing, sometimes it could be a refrigerator, sometimes it could be a, like an air conditioner or something. If you're hearing that, come in here and turn on this de-hum and mess with that. Turn it up and down a little bit. There's also a DS. If you have a S, like a sibilant sound in all your voiceovers, you could get rid of a little of that by turning on the de-esser, they call it. Reverb would be like, is the room really echoey? You can actually turn down an echo if you were like filming somewhere that was too echoey and you don't like it. You can chill out the echo in the room. Oh, they also have clarity, where you can make it sound more like it's right in your head, like it could be someone on the radio or something. Go back to edit and then grab another clip and just put on music. Click another one and put sound effects on it. So I have this weird sound I made a long time ago. I went under edit and I told that I wanted it to be a sound effect. And then I did auto match, which was kind of cool. What it did was it turned it down so it wasn't so distorted. So that was cool. It went down negative 10 decibels, essentially. And then I messed with the reverb a little bit. And then the other thing I did that's kind of good to know about is panning the stereo. See the pan here? Panning means it goes from left ear to right ear. See how it says left and right? So the way to get that to work is you come over here under effects controls, because every time you want to change something, you have to turn on effects controls. And then I turned on the little stopwatch under balance here. And then I said, all right, over here, I want the panner to be -45. The next dot, I want it to be panned a different direction. The next dot, I want it to be panned a different direction. So now mine goes like back and forth from ear to ear. If you want to do that on your timeline, you can go down here. Let me show you where it is real quick. This is the kind of the frustrating secret button. See right here, this little one on the corner of each clip. It's really hard to find. I don't like it, but nevertheless, it is there. So if you right click it, you can add little dots to the level, or you can work on the panner here, which I really like. I use that a lot. I can turn on balance. And now see how it's kind of doing what I had happening over here with my dots, my keyframes. It's starting up kind of on the left side. It goes down to the right side. There's a little R here in the corner. And then it goes back up to the center. And then I can also just click on it with control click and pan it back to the left and pan it back to the right. So I'm just holding down control. If I pan that up, we'll pan it down. So now it'll go right. And if I add one here and pan it up the other way, now it'll go left. So that's how you can make your stereo pan around like an old 1970s song. Use your pen tool, click, and it'll add a dot, and you can drag the dot. Click, drag the dot. And as I go through mine, I can see my little bars here. See my little sound bars sort of changing as it plays through. If you right click that purple square, you can set it back to channel volume or volume. This is what I use. I don't go to volume level. And then now I can do the same thing. I can use my little pen tool or control click, and that'll turn the volume up. And here where it's distorted and starting to get cut off, I might chill it like this, turn it down a little bit. It's nice because you can draw the little dots and then drag them. FX, volume, level. That's probably the most important sound thing I use. I use it almost every day. Try it with the pen tool. Try it with the control click. So Essential Sounds is under Window and Stereo. So under Essential Sounds, I'll say assign your sound to a category. You can do Control plus click to make a keyframe. I call them dots. So if you know those several things, you're looking pretty good. You can do a lot of really good sound stuff with that. Now I want to show you something called Remix. Really what this does is, in the old days when I was editing, I'd put a piece of sound in and the sound would be too long. I'd make an edit. I'd have to change it. I'd make another edit. I'd have to change it. It's like the music was really hard because I was always constantly trying to figure out how to cut it shorter, where to cut it shorter. So this is built in a way that it does it for you. Basically, you say, I want it to be so long, and then it'll chop the music. Right now, I've got this piece of music in here from YouTube. I love it. From Patricios. My volume of this piece. Here, I want to focus on making this music longer or shorter. So let's say I have this big, long section of my movie and I want this music to be a lot longer, but I don't want to constantly have to go like this, take my razor and then cut it right here and cut it right here and then bring it under here like crossfade or something like that. And that's how we used to have to do it all the time, and it took forever. Going by 4/4 time, you're trying to do 4 beats. So that's how we had to used to do it. Nowadays it's a lot easier. You just take your piece of music and you're like, oh man, this is too long. I really want it to be only this long, which is, let's see, that's 1 minute, 10 seconds long. So let's say, okay, you are definitely music, right? So let me go down here to right here under duration. I want to change the duration and I want to remix it. So let's change this and say I want you to be 1 minute and I want you to be 10 seconds long. It's going to automatically lengthen the music by cutting it and pasting it and fading it right here. So it did all that stuff I just did a minute ago for me automatically. I think it's really amazing. So that's how you do the remix. So let's just make it a lot longer so we can see more of the cuts and edits here. So I'll change it to 2 minutes long. Now it's made all sorts of cuts that it thinks are wise for me. So after doing the remix, I don't know, let's see if you could tell any difference here. See where created their own fades. I can't tell that they created their own fade there. It's just very smooth. Okay, so that's a lot better probably than I can do it that quick. You can say I want more segments, in which case, see, there's a lot more choppy lines. Or you can say I want fewer segments, so there's a lot less little squiggly choppy lines. Right here where it changes, I can never tell that it cut it. See that? That was where it cut it for me. Pretty amazing. So basically this automatically edits your music to fit what you want. And when you need it, it's going to be awesome. If you're doing a feature-length movie, especially, it's really hard to get the music to fit. I would say 98% of the time I've used this, it's been just perfect and it sounds great. Okay, I want to show you how to do sound ducking. You can say, well, I've got this music and I wanted to duck it against people talking, or I want to duck it against other music, or I want to duck it against sound effects. So basically, you can tell it what point do you start ducking, how loud does it need to be before my music turns down. And then you can say, well, if I have a voiceover, how much do I want my music to go down? Because honestly, it doesn't really take it down as far as I would like. A lot of times I turn that up a little bit. It's weird. If you turn up the ducking, it turns down the amount of sound. Fade duration. Usually in most movies, if there's music and someone starts talking, the music is probably about 2/3 of the way down when the person starts talking. So you start fading it out before they talk, not when they start talking. Here's how you do it. First, you bring in your video with, for example, a voiceover. I click on it and I say, well, this is not music, sound effects, or ambience. This is dialogue and or voiceover. So now that it's assigned to that, it gives you all sorts of cool essential sounds. This is under Windows Essential Sounds. And there's all sorts of cool things you can change here, starting with kind of the most common first and going downward, more or less. EQ, you could change how it sounds. You can enhance the speech and say, you know, it's a male voice, a low tone, versus a female voice, a high tone, generally speaking, right? Creative, you can have more reverb or not. Those are all different things you can do with the voiceover, okay? So that is the first step. You want to assign this to being the dialogue, and then you bring in your music, and you click on it, and you assign that to not being dialogue, sound effects, or ambience, but to say, hey, this is a piece of music. You click on it, and now it knows this is a voiceover or narration, and it knows that this is music. At which point, I'm ready to do some what's called ducking. You're going to duck the sound underneath the voiceover. So in order to do that, you just turn this on, and then you have to say generate keyframes, and then watch what happens over here as soon as I do that. It's going to fade it out right where the voiceover is. Here we go. Ready? Generate keyframes. There it goes. So it's turned the sound down here, and then when there's a pause and I'm not talking, right here, see, it turned it back up. Here it turned it back up for a second. Here it turned it back up for a second. So the sensitivity of that can be changed based on this. You can say, I really want you to trigger at a higher threshold or a lower threshold. I really want you to duck it a little bit more because the music's too loud. I really want the fade to go pretty darn fast, which might be more noticeable, or I want it to go slower, which will be less noticeable when the music fades out. And I also want the position of the fade, I want it to not really overlap the talking. I want it to fade out before the talking happens. Or you could say about in the middle of the talking, I want you to really be half faded out. So anyway, that's how you do it. Just to recap, you assign this to voiceover and or narration is what they call it, or dialogue is what they call it here, you see. And then you go down here, you click on your music, and you say, I want to assign this to being music, and you can tweak it a little bit, and then you turn on the ducking, and you say duck against voice or dialogue, and then when you're ready, you hit generate keyframes, and it'll create the keyframes for you. That's ducking, which is really awesome. That it can save you an awful lot of time, especially when you go like this and move your clip over, and you're like, oh no, man, this is like messed up all my fade outs. They're all in the wrong spot. Well, let's just generate new keyframes here. Boom, it popped it over right to where it should be. Love it. Fantastic. So I just assigned this audio clip to ambience. So you can make your room more echoey by turning on reverb. And then when I turned that on, some nice little buttons show up over here on the effects controls that I can play with too. Every clip, when you click on it, shows up under your effects controls. And you can see what you've done up here and change it. This makes a new keyframe. This basically says, all right, put a keyframe here a little later, put a keyframe and then change it. So that's an easy way to do this. A little later, put a keyframe. But if you just drag it, it puts a keyframe anyway, automatically. The next thing we want to check out, the effects are under Window Effects, and they're underneath right where the video effects are too. So you have both, you know, Luma presets, audio effects, and video effects, and transitions. Window Effects, audio effects, and that'll bring up your list. And how you do it is you just grab it and you just set it on your clip, and then it shows up under effects controls, and then just mess with it. Just see what you can get. Best thing you could do is just go through and try all these, because you can hear what they do. Turn it way up, turn it way down. Sometimes I have to use headphones, and every single one of these has about 10 or 20 things under that you can do. They're exactly similar to what's in Adobe Audition. So the ones I use the most, amplify. See this amplify? If you turn up your audio as high as you can and it's still not loud enough, you can put this on it and it'll like go crazy on it. De-esser, I mentioned that. It's like tss, tss, tss. If you have your person with their microphone right by their mouth, it can make bad sounds like that. So here's this. Check this out. This is under Dynamics. Once again, you kind of just have to mess with it. You could turn on different kinds of gates. Gates are basically like if it hits a certain volume, it just turns it off, high or low. All of these have this drop down here. See this drop down? Delay will create like an echoey sound. Graphic equalizer, I would definitely mess with this because you could turn down the bass and turn up the highs. High pass and low pass basically says only let through the high noises or only let through the low noises. Parametric equalizers just has a lot of cool sound effects in it. Flange makes it sound like you have a seashell on your ear. The phaser kind of goes, weeno, 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 weeno. That's what the phaser does. Chorus just sounds like makes an echoey sound again. And here's your noise reductions. Reverb will make it sound like a room for you. If you try studio reverb, distortion, that'd be like guitar distortion. Guitar Suite has different sounding guitars. That might be helpful. A lot of times I put them on and then I turn them off. If you see here where they're all stacked up, Dynamics, Studio Reverb, all my stuff, just turn off the little FX. So theoretically, you can put like 30 of them on there. Just turn them on one at a time and try things out. Some of them are very subtle and some of them are pretty intense. Does anybody know what the words wet and dry mean when it comes to sound? So wet means that you've messed with it and you've thrown a bunch of water on it or thrown a bunch of effects on it. Dry means that you've turned all the effects off and it's how it was originally recorded. So you'll hear that phrase a lot. Something's wet and dry. This voiceover I'm working on this particular movie, for some reason, the left side was a lot stronger than the right side. So let me show you how I fixed that really quick. You actually have to find the clip, right-click it, and then if you look under audio channels here, you can see I assigned both sides to the right side. So in the left ear, you're hearing the right ear, and on the right ear, you're hearing the right ear. And then it sounds mono because you're only really playing one side of my voiceover. See how one of my channels was super, super loud and the other was like super, super quiet? This one was so distorted. See how the waves are cut off on the top? That's how you know there's distortion if it's just chopped like that. So I think I had the left side turned up really high and the right side turned down really low. So what I did was I right-clicked this because basically the left side was ruined. And it sounded horrible, and I thought, oh, no, I have to re-record it. But then I saved it because I went into my audio channels, and I said, just play the right side. And then I changed the volume and stuff. And so there's always a way to fix things, except unless it's really bad. Right-click it. Editing clip in Adobe Audition, that would be cool. So if you know you want to mess with this clip in Adobe Audition, right-click it, and you can open it, and it'll link it. And then when you save it, it will update it here. So let me show you guys probably the most important thing I've ever done in sound, and learned the thing that helps me the very, very most of all the tools I've got here. I pretty much do this to everything I bring in. What I want to do is I want to make sure I kind of study it for a second, and I can see this peak here is pretty high, right? And the only way you can see this is if you pry apart the channel and open it up like this. You have to come over here on the side, open it up. Here, the waves are really strong, and they're pretty much as high as they can go. That one right there is about as high as it can go before it starts becoming distorted. And then this one's also pretty big, but maybe, yep, it's not quite as big as the other one. So a lot of times I'll study my track here and I'll say, well, it could go a little higher, but these might be too quiet. You know, I might need to turn it up a little bit without distorting this. So this is probably my favorite thing. I right click the clip and I go under audio gain. See that? And then it gives you some choices here. Basically, you could say, just turn it up to what I tell it to be, or you could say, turn it up by three decibels. But these two are really, really helpful to me. Basically, what it does is it says, whatever this highest peak is, turn it up as high as it'll go without being distorted, which would be like 0. I don't think it's going to do much. Let's see. When I hit OK, watch these waves down here. On the count of 3, I'm going to hit OK. Ready? 1, 2, 3. It pumped them up. Did you see that? Before, after, before. See right here? What it did was it turned up my volume of this peak until it was just at the highest it could go without getting distorted and nothing more. So it's very, very helpful because you could do it all at once. Like I can just select every single clip in my project. I could just go like this. And I like to do it before I edit. And then I right click it and I say audio gain. And then a lot of times I'll turn it up just a little bit more because I don't care if one little dot gets distorted here and there. So a lot of times I'll set it at 3 decibels. So here we go. Hit OK. See how they all jumped up? I do that before anything else because then I know I'll have really strong signals and everything will be maxed out without any kind of distortion unless I recorded it with distortion. I'm going to turn it down to -10 this time. Like, let's say everything's too loud. So my waves should go way down here. Yeah, look how far down they went. See? If you have problems with your audio and some are loud and some are quiet, this is really what you want to do. Essential sounds is another thing you should really remember. It's under Windows. Panning, stereo, volume. They're kind of two different things. Volume is how loud it is. Stereo, panning is left and right ears. Effects controls is a really important window to remember. I think the best way to add a marker here on the top is right over here. You guys see this little marker button? So there it added it. I had to be selected off of crap. So that now there's a marker, and a lot of people love these markers. I wish they had a bigger note on them. Then I would say something like, put wind effect here. This would be really good if you're working with someone else, you know, and you can change the color of the marker. Chapters are interesting. In the old days, we'd use chapters, and on a DVD, it would make those little chapters like chapter 1, Bob gets blown up. And the other thing I really like is, see, now I have these two markers down here, right? And I have this marker up here. So one thing I can do with that is I can drag this baby over. And if I get it close, it will snap to my little marker. So this is very helpful if you have a sound effect and you know exactly where you want it, and then zoom in, and then this will pop right to that, but only if you have the magnet over here turned on, snapping, right? So let me pull this other one over and I'll see a little indicator. Oop, there it is. See a little indicator. Let go. Boom, there it is. It's totally sunk up. Could you see how that also might be cool if you're doing music and you can see the beat down here and you put like a marker for every beat, you know, you're like booch, and then you go over here and you're like booch. So anyway, markers are nice. Snap, sync. L cuts and J cuts, you know, you have your picture edited right here if you're looking at my desktop, and you have your audio edited right here. It's pretty often nowadays that they won't be one-to-one. They won't match up. You have to have hidden A and B media on the ends of these. Like I have to have something I could drag out on each side. So I can control just the audio or just the picture by hitting Alt and dragging. See that? And then I can make the other one long to kind of match it. So now I have the audio is cutting before the video. See what I'm getting at? I use that a lot. Because sometimes there's something that I don't want in the audio and I need to hide it with ambience from another room or something. If you hit Alt, you'll see you can drag just the video
or just the audio, or, they're still attached. If I just drag them, they go together. But if I hit Alt, you can drag one or the other. This one looks like the L because the sound comes before the audio. So I put a little picture here to kind of give you an idea what the J and L cuts look like, because it's too hard to describe. So here is an example of the L cut, movie, picture, and then you cut to something else while this guy keeps talking. So that's kind of shaped like an L, see that? Where a J cut is you hear the next guy talking, and it takes a second for him to show up. That's called the J cut. This one's probably the most common. Like you'll hear a sound like a jet airplane, and then they'll cut to a picture of the jet airplane, or you'll hear someone yelling off screen. The person looks over, and then you see who was yelling at them. So I think I've seen the J cut a lot more than the other one. So those are two really cool ways to cut. L or J cuts, use Alt and drag edit point. To do a fade, you go under audio transitions, and this is the one they have highlighted. This is your default one. And you just drag it where they're meeting, and as long as there's hidden media, it'll make a nice little fade from one to the other. See that? So that's how you put a fade in. You can drag it and make it longer. You can even drag one side. Control. There we go. See that? So you can really fine tune your fade. Really helpful. The only thing I don't like about that is they have to be in the same layer in order for it to work. But most of the time when I'm editing, I don't put everything in the same layer. I do it more like this, which works too, because then I just drag this out and I'll do just a fade like this. I'll hit Control click, and I'll fade it out. Sometimes I won't even go down all the way. I'll just go down like half the way. And then I'll fade this one up to meet it like that. Pry this open so we can see it. So now I have one fading out drawn by hand and one fading up drawn by hand. And I will tweak these forever to try to get them just right. I really love to have clean sound, and it's not that hard. Every single edit, I just look at it and study it and listen to it 2 or 3 times. I stick my headphones on. In Hollywood, they'll use super, super wonderful speakers, but they also have a little tiny crappy speaker called the Ma Bell speaker, and they'll play it over that. And if they play it on mono speakers, lots of different passes to make sure it sounds good. That's why they get paid so much. They spend so much time on it. So there's lots of different ways of doing the audio, but the last thing that I do after I've done all of that and I've tweaked all the sounds, I put my music in and I ducked it, and I also went in and dialogue, music, sound effect, tweaking it, just really working the audio. The last thing that I do, window, audio track mixer. Then you're telling it, I want to mix what I've been working on. So it's good to kind of learn how these work. Basically, how they work is I have one channel for every layer down here. So that's pretty helpful. And you get used to it. You play over it, and you can see that I have sound here and here. And then what it does is it takes all my tracks. I think I only have 1, 2, 3, 4 tracks. Let's see if that's accurate here. Okay, and I'm going to pull this bar up, so I'm only working on audio. I might have this open for my last pass. So here's audio channel 1, which corresponds to audio channel 1. Here's audio channel 2, which is right here. Here's 3, which has nothing on it. See? I mean, we may as well throw something on it. And then I have 4, which doesn't really have anything on it. And I may as well throw something on that. So let me grab something, drag it over. So that's what I've got. And then you've got mix, which is kind of what all of them are doing here down on this very last thing. See that? I'm going to save this thing before it crashes, because whenever I start doing weird junk like this, it's untested as much as the other simple stuff. And it always seems like it wants to crash Premiere. I'd save copies and stuff a lot. If you watch while I play over this, you'll see it bounces corresponding to 1, 2, and then it'll bounce at 3, and then it'll bounce at 2 and 4. So let's see what it does. I hit my space bar. 1 and 2, there's 3, and then 1 and 4 should be acting out, except there's nothing. Looks like there's nothing in 4. Yeah, there's something in 4. Maybe it's muted. I don't know. It's turned all the way down. See? All right, I just fixed it. So now we should see something in 4 here. All right, so that's how the mixer works. And then the last thing you need to know on a mixer is that all this stuff funnels way down to this thing right here. And this is your final left and right output.
This is something that you could really spend a lot of time on. But the main things that are nice is that while you're playing, you can say, I want this in the left side or the right side. While you're playing, you can drag this up and it will record it for you, or you can say it's too loud and you can pull it down. That's what they do in Hollywood. They have some dude, and you can actually link this up to an actual board and push it with your fingers, and this will go where your fingers go, if that makes sense. That's kind of what this is for, is just to do one last pass and say, whoa, that sound is way too loud. I need to back it down, or the music or whatever, or the voiceover is a little too quiet. Let me boost it a little bit. The other thing that's interesting about this, you can go to your in and out marks, or you can play over your in and out. And to put an in mark, you just go here and you say I, and you go over here and say O. And now if you hit this little play button here, it'll go into out, and you could turn on loop or not. And you can even record in here, which is really cool. So let's say you wanted to record a voiceover and you've got a little mic set up in your closet and you got the cord stretched into your computer. When you're ready to record, you just hit this little R here. And so this would turn red. And as soon as you hit play down here, it'll actually record your voiceover. So theoretically, you could just talk over your video and record it. So if I want to just hear one, because I'm really tweaking one channel, I'd go here to like track 1, which is track 1 up here, right? Here it is, track 1. And I'd say, I really only want to listen to this. Turn these other guys off. So we should see a mute over here in a second. Let's try it out. I'm going to hit solo it. And now this S button comes on, which says, I only want to hear this one track. If you want to hear 2, you turn this one on. Now 2 of them are on, see? Or you turn it off. It's basically just coordinating here. The other one, obviously, is mute. So if you don't want to hear a track and you don't want to export it, you would turn that on. Just don't forget to turn it off if you export. One time I did a 5 surround sound mix. It's hard to do. If you're going to do like a feature film for somebody or something you really want to go to festivals, it might be worth it to learn more about it and study it for 3 days. And basically you could say, okay, I want the guy to come in on the left side of the stereo. He's going to go across the room. And when he exits on the right, we won't hear his footsteps anymore. So you can pan his feet across the room. There's these kind of different settings here that you can use. It can record what I do while I'm playing it. So if I hit play and I have latch on and I drag this, sort of a mess. When I stop, it should record those choices I made. You may have to turn on some of these track keyframes volume. There it is. See what I recorded? So it's doing it for the whole track, not just for a clip, which is a little weird. I'm going to hit play and then I'm going to like drag it down, and it'll actually write over the top of things. But in general, it's nice because you can just sort of be like, all right, turn that down, turn it back up. A mess. Okay, so see, it turned it down, turned it back up, and it recorded over the top of what I did earlier. It's a little bit of a drag because if you want to edit it, it's hard to move all of these dots. Now I can only like move one. It's called latch. Then there's another one called touch. Touch means you're going to move it and it's going to go back where it was. Let's see if that works. Here we go. I'm going to hit play and I'm going to drag it down and I let go and it went back where it was. Did you see that? That's called touch. Wherever it was before you started, it goes back there. So that could be handy. You know, you've got one section, you know, you want to turn it down for a second, but you want it to go back where it was. I think it would be good because then it'll keep everything from there on in your movie the same, except for that one little area where you touched it. You can play over one little section over and over again by hitting in and out, I and O. If I want to get rid of these brackets here, I right click it and I say clear in and out. See that? And that'll go away. And then everything that you're working on will funnel down into here. And this will be kind of like your final master. And you can even tweak that a little bit. So if your whole movie is a little on the quiet side, you could come in here and jack the whole movie up 4 or 5 decibels. And it'll just stay that way, clear through the whole movie from now on. See that? It's distorting a little. Did you see how it's hitting that? So maybe I bring it down. All right. You kind of want everything up around here, but not sticking up in the 0. Reading meters, never trust your ears, because what if you have your TV turned up really loud? All sound is relative. Audio track mixer, and we'll put on there touch
/latch. I also had solo, and it had mute, which are dangerous because if you keep mute on, it'll export your movie and a whole track will be missing, and you'll be putting it on YouTube, and all of a sudden you're like, what happened to my music? Oh crap, I muted it, That's happened to me a couple times, I'm sure. It works on the whole track, not just a clip. One thing I've noticed about this software is almost anything you want to do, there's always a way to do it. This is definitely something, if you're good at audio, it will show, and people will probably hire you before somebody else, because the most amateur thing everyone does is lousy audio, I'm noticing almost every time. Always watch your meter first, because, if you got your headphones turned up really loud, you're like, whoa, that's loud, and you turn down the audio, that's not going to do you any good, because you're turning down kind of the root of all sound. And if you then turn your headphones way up, then your sound's going to be quiet on your movie. If you turn your monitor way down, then you're going to turn your sound up too loud and it's going to get distorted. So always base what you're hearing on your meters first. There's two things in Adobe Audition that you eventually want to know. You can open up your sound in Adobe Audition, and there's this thing you can do where you can see this little spot here where there's no sound. That would be like the ambient sound of the room, right? So I can select that piece right there, and I can say, if there's like a shh or something here, it will remember that. And then you can go and select the whole thing and say, anywhere where shh is, get rid of it. And all these little gaps and everywhere where there's that hissing sound, it'll just be gone. It's really amazing. And here's the other coolest thing you can do in Audition. This has a little area here where someone's phone rang. So what you can do with this is you can come into this software and you can grab this like healing brush here that's kind of like a clone tool in Photoshop, and you can go in and you can draw over the top of the ring, and it will actually erase someone's ringing phone, and it sounds really good. I couldn't hear it. To me, that's like the most amazing thing I've ever seen in any software in the last 5 years. So just remember, you can do it. You can sample noise like an air conditioner or refrigerator and get rid of that. And if there's a ring sound that's very distinct, you can clone it out. Just like in Photoshop, you can draw it out. The other thing I've been showing people is just remember to watch your levels. It's okay if it hits the red. Don't let it stick there. It'll get distorted and sound like rat scratches, kind of. Digital distortion is not pretty. It's not like a guitar distortion like Jimi Hendrix. It's not a pretty sound. It's more like, it sounds like rats digging at the back of your head or something. Signal to noise basically means when you're recording, you have to turn up the level of recording as high as you can without distortion. And if you don't, what happens is you record a voice, but the voice is so low that the noise under the voice is also loud. And so what happens is you turn up someone's voice and there's a hissing sound. And as you turn up their voice, you hear, which is the noise. So you're trying to get a really strong signal being recorded and less noise, if that makes any sense. If there's a quiet sound, you kind of want to record it as loud as you can, because you could turn it down, but if you turn it up, there'll be a lot of hiss in there. You're always trying to get rid of hiss. These are crazy chords. If you got a job, eventually you want to know what most of these are, because let's say you're assistant and you're helping some dude, you might need to plug into the mixer board, in which case he would say, get me an XLR. And you'd be like, oh crud, what's an XLR? This is the XLR. This is the male because it looks like a male, I guess. This is the male. This is the female up here. See? There's S-Video, which is pretty much obsolete. Coaxial is pretty common. Here's a BNC that has a good lock on it. And the only other one that's really important to know is RCA. Notice this one's stereo because it has that little extra piece, and this one does not. It would be mono, right? You've seen that probably with your little headphone jacks. Anyway, it's just good sooner or later to get good at this stuff. Have you guys ever looked at a speaker bouncing, like actually seen it in a car bouncing or something? That it gives you a good sense of what the waves are doing. And it's just all it's doing is compressing and decompressing air, and the air goes in and hits your eardrum. It's kind of amazing. So they used to record on wax cylinders, records, but they would skip or they get scratched and then it would be out of sync. Then they did waves on the side of the film. Then they started doing videotape, and they had basically rust
that was magnetized and bent different ways, and that's how they would make waves. And now it's all ones and zeros, basically on and off switches. So it's kind of like a wave that's made of pillars nowadays. If you want really good sound, you have to do analog, which is more like a true wave.
Well, I hope this helps a lot with your advanced audio recordings and editing, and I hope that you will like and follow. Check out my other videos.